It is 7 o'clock, and I thought, let's try something a little different now that it is summer and, it's people have things to do and it's, not as cold outside. The sun is shining, well, someplace, but not here. But I thought I would go ahead and try a 7 o'clock review. It could just be me, it could be somebody else too. But let's get to it. Let's do some practice math. If you have questions, you know what to do. Just stick them in the chat. And I think we'll go from here. So. Let's see. Oh, I skipped math at the end of yesterday's, or I should say Wednesday's session. So I wanted to go ahead and do these math problems today. So here we go. A property has an assessed value of $340,000. The local tax rate is expressed as 45 mils. The homeowner qualifies for a $25,000 homestead exemption. What is the annual property tax? Let's see if we can do it. Hello, Miss Crystal. Hello. I'm glad I'm not alone. Again, I started 7 o'clock this time. Oh, hello, Carolyn. I'm so glad you found me on YouTube too. Yay, I've got at least two people here with me. So let's do this math. So we know the property has an assessed value of $340,000. That's what we'll base our taxes off of. The local tax rate is 45 mils, and there's a $25,000 homestead exemption. So the first step that I'm going to do is say, well, we've got this $340,000 assessed value, but we also have to deal with that homestead exemption, which is basically saying you're not going to be taxed on 25,000 of that value. So we're going to subtract 25,000. We're going to get a calculator, but I do believe that's going to be what? I think I can do that. That's $315,000. That's the new assessed value because we had to take into consideration that exemption. Cool. So now that we've got that exemption taken care of, we've got to express our mills, or we've got to deal with these mills. And remember, I like to say you want to remember if it's mills, then the M, just think each letter represents a digit. All right, we want to remember 1,000, like a millimeter, 1,000, a millennia, the thousand idea. So with a tax rate of 45 mils, and we know we're dealing with these mils, I like to go ahead and take this 315,000. I'm going to divide it by 1,000, and that will give me 315. Then I'm going to take that 315 and multiply it by 45. Right? Now, the other way you could look at that, because this will give us an answer, or I could say, oh, you know what? 45 mils means $45 per the number of thousands. So, which means I would still be dividing by 1,000 either way. But you're going to get to the same place. So 315 times 3 times 45 would be 315 times 45. That gives me, oh, and by the way, let's see. Did I just put that in wrong? Do. Let me make sure I'm doing it right here. $45 per thousand, or 315 times 45. I came up with $14,175. I mean, that sounds a little bit high, but I mean, 45 mils just sounds high. Again, these are written by what do you call it? AI. So that just sounds really high, but you know what? Maybe if you're in Connecticut, New York, California, maybe that's a normal rate. I don't know. But we do know that this answer here matches our answer here, which is going to be B, and that's going to be the 14,175. That math wasn't so hard. I couldn't math the other day. I was tired. We'd mathed a lot the last time. All right, let's go ahead and do this one, number 151. But of course, if you have questions, Just go ahead and ask. All right. A seller lists a property for $389,000. A buyer submits an offer for $370,000 with a request for $8,000 in seller concessions towards closing cost. The seller counters at $382 with $4,000 in concessions. The buyer accepts the counteroffer. If the listing broker's commission is 6% of the sales price, split 50-50 with the buyer's broker, and the listing agent receives 60% of the listing broker share, what does the listing agent earn on this transaction? So before we find the price of the house, let's talk about our split for the commission. Whatever the total commission is, we know some of it is going to go to the seller's agent and some of it is going to go to the buyer's agent. And it says here it's split 50-50. So this person's going to get 50%, and then this, I should say, broker is going to get 50%. And then this question says the listing broker receives 60% of the listing broker's share. So whatever the seller's broker got, that then gets split 60% to the agent and 40% stays with the broker. And this question is asking us about what is it here? What is the agent taking? So we know we're going to have to do some math. We're going to do kind of did a sideways commission tree there, but that's okay. We need to know what numbers we want to manipulate. Now, going through here, they listed the property for $389, but that's not what you got an offer for. The buyer submitted an offer for $370 with a request for $8,000 in seller concessions towards closing costs, and the seller countered. So we're not at $370 with the $8,000. The seller countered at $382, so $382,000 with $4,000 in concessions. That's the number we want. It's at, so our sales price is $382 with $4,000 in concessions. All right. So we've got to figure out, what does that mean? Well, I know that we want to ignore the concessions, because remember, when we do our commissions, the concessions aren't our problem. That seller, that's coming out of your bottom line. At the end of the day, the price that is on that contract is $382. So I'm going to take that $382. We're going to ignore this $4,000 in concessions, and I know there's a 6% commission. So I'm going to multiply that times 0.06, and that will give me a total commission. So let's grab the calculator. 382 times 6%. And that's going to give me a total commission of $22,920. Now, $22,920, that's what we're going to take. We're going to take this number right here and we're going to put it up here, or we're going to move that information down there. So, in fact, I'll do it in blue. What I did up here, I'm going to do down here in blue. So we had that total commission of $22,920, and it got split. The buyer's agent got 50%. And our question isn't about the buyer's agent, so who cares? The seller's, I shouldn't say agent, I should say broker, so I don't confuse you. The seller's broker got 50% of that. So 50% of 920, I'm just going to, multiply it by 50. And that's going to give me, or I could divide it by 2 either way. That's $11,460. That's what the listing broker got, the seller's broker got. But now we need to pay out this agent. The agent got 60% of that $11,460. So I'm going to multiply it by 60%. And I got $6,876. $6,876. That is what the agent received, and that number matches what we have here. So good job, us. Yeah. Remember, when it comes to math, I'm going to say neatness counts, but I don't know how neat this is, but notice what I tend to do is label. Now, if I was taking the real test right now, I probably label more of these numbers, but y'all, pen and the pencil and the paper, you're good. Just, you're good. Oh, Crystal, I see you're asking. Ah, there you go. I see you, Miss Crystal. I didn't see the chat and you got both answers right. Nice. I love it. All right, let's move on. Remember, we did last time the couple that were not math, so we're here at 157. A property is located in a flood zone. The buyer is obtaining a federally backed mortgage. Which statement about flood insurance is correct? All right, the property is in a flood zone. So that tells me there needs to be some sort of flood insurance because it's a federally backed mortgage, meaning the federal government's involved. And they want to make sure if this thing floods, they get some type of money. So let's see what our options are here. We've got A, flood insurance is optional for all residential properties, regardless of location. Nice try. That's not our answer. If your property, especially residential property, is in a flood zone, you will be getting insurance. B, the lender is required to mandate flood insurance as a condition of the federally backed loan for properties in designated flood zones. I like that one. I like it a lot, but let's see what our other answers are just to make sure we can rule them out. We've got, okay, and Crystal, you're saying B. Okay, I'm thinking it too, but let's look at what other things are. C, the seller must purchase flood insurance before closing, not the seller. If people were to get this question wrong when I was doing a practice exam or even a real exam, just you can't miss this word seller. That's a problem. And so, yeah, that's not true. Is the buyer going to have to get flood insurance? Yeah, not the seller. And then we've got D. The standard homeowners insurance automatically includes flood coverage. We don't like this word automatically, and standard homeowners insurance policies do not. That would be do not include flood coverage. That is extra. You're going to have to get some type of flood insurance, and it usually, for a lot of people, will come through FEMA, but no. So that's not an answer either, meaning our answer, in fact, is B. Yay! B is our answer. All right, let's do our next one. Ooh, more math. Why all this math at the end of these questions? I don't know, but you know what? It doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt for us to do some math. A commercial property's operating statement shows the following. Gross potential income, $240,000. Vacancy loss, 9%. Operating expenses, $78,000. Capital reserves, $12,000. Debt service, $72,000. What is the correct NOI? Okay, so how do we find NOI? We know I've done this a number of times, but let's write it out. You've got your potential gross income. And from that, we're going to subtract out our vacancies. And we're going to take out our, and that would, I should say, give you that, no, why can I not think of potential? Then there's the, not estimated, it is the effective. Good gosh, why that E word wouldn't come to me. Effective gross income. And then from that effective gross income, we're going to take out our operating expenses, and then that will give us our NOI. So this is not necessarily a hard problem, but you got to remember how to find it. So let's go here. We've got gross potential income, 240. I'm going to subtract out my vacancy losses. So that's subtract the 9%. So by the way, I could do this just by doing 240K, and I'm going to multiply it by 91%. These two answers are going to give me the same thing. I feel like doing it this way only means I have to put in one calculation into the calculator. Otherwise, what I'd have to do is find 9% of 240 and then subtract it out of the 240. And that's where I tend to make mistakes. It's just too many steps. So I literally am going to put into the calculator 240,000 times 91%. Because if we take out, if you have 100% of something and you take out 9% of it, you'll have 91% left. So I can just find 91% of 240,000, and I got 218,400. That's our effective gross income. I'll make my pen a little smaller. There we go. That's our effective gross income. So now I need to take out my expenses. So if I take out my expenses, that's going to be 218,400 subtract 78,000, and that's going to give me $140,400. All right. Now, is that my NOI? We still got some other numbers here. You got operating expenses, you got capital reserves, you got debt service. So the question is, are they trying to trick us with those other numbers? Do we include them? Right? So, I will say this. Most of the time, what I've seen in my state for my practice questions, we would take out the capital reserves. In North Carolina, I would say go ahead and take out the capital reserves. However, not all states and not all commercial real estate is a lot more loosey-goosey. It's not a hard line. Capital reserves should or should not be taken into effect with NOI. I'm going to go ahead and take those out. But I do know debt service is never, that is a hard line. That is never going to be included in an NOI. That's a no to debt service. So I'm going to take that 140,400 and I'm going to subtract out the 12,000. And notice 140,400 isn't even a number there. So let's see if it's not an answer. If 140,400 minus 12,000 is up there. So minus 12,000, that gave me 128,400. Okay. So I don't like any of those answers. Let's see what our answer key says. The closest is C. D. So C is the closest to the proper calculation. Okay. Yeah. I guess remember when it comes to these Chat GPT, Claude AI created questions. For some reason, now this was Claude. For some reason, Claude thinks it's okay to be like, oh, the closest answer is C. Right? That's not going to happen on your real exam. When they say AI sometimes hallucinates, there you go. But I know I did the math right, so boom. Because either we're going to include the capital reserves or we're not. So it's one of those two answers. So I guess in theory, D could be right if you were in a state where they don't want you to include the capital reserves. Go reference your textbook, what your state has provided, and that will tell you how you should do the problem. Okay. 159. An investor is evaluating a property using the band of investment method. Y'all, I don't even know what that is. The band of investment method, that's new to me. Is it a band? I mean, is it jazz? Is it rock? What kind of band is this? But we'll see. Let's see when we figure this out. To determine an appropriate capitalization rate. The property will be financed with a 75% LTV loan at 6.5% with a mortgage constant of 0.0758, and the investor requires a 12% return on equity. What is the overall and what is the indicated overall cap rate? Okay. Well, we know the answer is not 12% return on equity. I mean, I got nothing, y'all. I got nothing. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Let's see. A 75% LTV loan with at 6.5%. Right, Crystal? Don't we need an amount to work with? Well, I think it's just asking us for this cap rate. And yes, if it gave us a cap a value, then we could find a cap rate. But I think it wants us to manipulate this return on equity somehow. So I do believe what they're telling us, this mortgage constant, maybe that is our Maybe that is our, is that, I wonder if mortgage constant is another word for factor. Yeah, I got nothing. So let's see. Okay, 6.5%, 6.5%, that'd be 7%. I guess maybe I would guess C, maybe. I don't know. I would be guessing. Let's see what the answer key says, because I ain't got nothing, y'all. I'm like, what? Okay, so Claude says band of investment equals the debt portion times the mortgage constant plus the equity portion times equity yield. Hmm. Uh, I don't even know what that means. I don't know. I know this. This probably isn't going to be on your exist. You're lost on this one, Caroline. Girl, that makes two of us because I'm like, more band of investment, debt portion times mortgage constant is plus okay. How do we know what the debt portion is? Let me think. All right. So it says that you would take the 0.75. Okay. So it's telling me I'm going to choose a different color just because it's a good reason to learn. It said we should take the 0.75. And why is that the debt portion? Well, you borrowed 75% of the value, and it wants us to multiply that by the mortgage constant. So I guess that's times the 0.0758. And then we're adding the equity portion, which is, I guess, the 0.25. Because if you're borrowing 75%, then you're putting 25% down, and that's your original equity, and you're multiplying it by what your equity is going to be, your yield. So that would be 0.12. So according to them, if I do the 0.75 times the 0.0758, that gives me 0.05685. And then if I do over here, the 0.25 times the 0.12, that gives me 0.03. So if I add that together, I would get, so if I do this and add it, that's going to give me 0.03 plus 0.05685. That's going to give me 0.08685. And then if I multiply that by 100, that would give me 8.68 or 9%. So our answer is B, like they said. You know what? My answer is I don't know a single state that would test on this. It's interesting. I learned something. I'm going to take that piece of information and throw it away. But it did help me think about this. Calling this the debt portion and calling this the equity portion. All right, cool. I'm okay with that. The equity yield. Okay, I get that. That's the return on equity. But here's the thing. I think this question is a lot like real life. There is no way in pre-licensing you are going to be able to learn everything. But if you've really learned in pre-licensing what the basics mean, if I was in a situation where an investor wanted me to help them with these numbers or started talking about it, I would be like, okay, I don't know what you're talking about, but could you kind of explain it to me? And now I've got a base of knowledge. Oh, I know what the LTV means. I know what a return on equity means. I can kind of piece it together. You're not going to get perfect. Look, 25 years, I didn't do commercial. I'm like, I don't know. But I do know how to take the knowledge I have and not feel like a complete idiot, right? Somebody could explain it to me. It won't be me explaining it to you, but if I was in real life, somebody could explain this to me and I have a base of what those numbers mean. Still not sure what that mortgage constant is. We're gonna roll on though. We're gonna roll on. All right. Biggest thing I would say is if this happens to you on your exam, don't panic. Toss it away. If I just get one math question wrong, because I'm like, I don't know what this is, that's not going to cause you to fail. But if you start doubting yourself and your knowledge when you see a question like this, you will fail. You start doubting yourself, and then there's nothing to go with. So, Crystal, like you said in my chat in the Zoom room, don't we need an amount to work with? Yeah. I took a guess. My guess was wrong. But hey, if I don't let it throw my confidence, that's a good thing then. It's good. All right, more math. Let's see if we can do this one. An investor purchases an office building for $1,200,000. The land is valued at $200,000. Using a straight line depreciation over the IRS allowed 39-year recovery period for commercial property, what is the annual depreciation deduction? Okay, well, I'm just going to follow. Again, this seems kind of not what I would be used to, but that's okay. That could happen to you on the exam. The basic vocab doesn't change. How they word the problems will change a little bit. Oh, spider web. Great, as long as the spider's not on there. Y'all, if I die in the middle of the night, you know I was attacked by an eight-legged creature that I don't see right now. Okay, so we know the IRS is saying, hey, we're going to allow a 39-year recovery period for commercial property. So I'm assuming that means in 39 years, we're going to not be basically worth anything, right? We're going to say, oh, its useful life is 39 years. You'll get value as a commercial property from this for 39 years. So we need to know what the property is worth now. It's got a total of 1,200,000, but 200,000 of this is land. This is total. That's the land and the fixtures, what's the word I'm thinking of? Improvement. But we need to take out the land, and that gives us $1 million. $1 million. So if I take that $1 million and I divide it by 39, because this straight line depreciation means we're going to take off a certain amount of money so that in 39 years, there's no more value left. So 1 million divided by 39, that gave me $25,641.03 per year in depreciation. Is that a number? 25,641. 25,641. Boom, B. That's what I got. Hey, B's what I got. That's okay, Crystal. If whether you got that or not, you're good. Now you know where you made your mistake. Yeah, it looks like you did not take out this land. Remember, land never depreciates in this class. So it's okay. All right, number 161. A property owner dies intestate without a will and has no surviving spouse, children, parents, or siblings. This person, hopefully they may not have had family. They could have been, an orphan, but they didn't have to be alone. That's very sad. What is Claude trying to say? I don't have a spouse or children. What my parents may not be here or my siblings. Okay, spinning out of control. That's not my future. I'm gonna marry Jason Momoa, and then he's got kids, and my siblings are gonna live forever. So are my parents. So let's see what would happen. My guess is they're trying to say, oh, if they died without a will and they have no basic heirs, we know it's going to escheat to the state. I think they went around, they just went around. My dad would say, you went around your elbow to get to your ass to basically test on a sheet. But okay. A, it becomes property of the state through a sheet. I like that. B, it passes to the deceased closest friend by default. If they're not lonely, that sounds awesome. But if they wanted that to happen, they should have had a will. C, it passes to the deceased employer. Absolutely not. They're already working us too hard. D, the mortgage holder automatically receives title. No. Our answer is A. Testing us on this idea of escheat. You might have known the answer escheat or known what it means, but it doesn't mean that they won't give you these scenario type questions. Okay. A borrower applies for a conventional loan with a down payment of 15%. So that means the loan is 85% LTV. Right? The lender requires PMI. Well, yes. Once the borrower's equity reaches 20% of the original purchase price through payments, the borrower requests PMI removal. Yes. The lender refuses, stating the property value has declined. Under the Homeowners Protection Act, which statement is correct? I don't know. This Homeowners Protection Act is new to me, so let's see what we can find out. A, the PMI removal is entirely at the lender's discretion. I don't think that's it. My guess is that we're not leaving anything. Why have an act if it's up to the lender? B, the lender must terminate PMI automatically when the loan balance reaches 78% of the original value, regardless of the property's current property's value. C, the lender must remove PMI immediately upon the borrower's request at 20% equity based on the original value. Or D, the lender can require PMI for the entire life of the loan if property values decline. Well, my guess is it's not D either. Guess is it's not D. So our guess, let's think. The lender must terminate at 78% of the original value, regardless of the current property's value, or the lender must remove PMI immediately upon the borrower's request at 20% equity based on the original value. Everything I've ever read says, hey, the lender must terminate automatically at 78% of the value. I mean, because C leaves it open, if the buyer never requests to terminate it, it could go on forever, and that's not true. So I'm going to go with B, the lender must terminate, because I know that's true. I know that is a true statement, that they must terminate at 78%, and it's the only one that I know for sure. And, Caroline, I know I see you said C, but what happens if that borrower doesn't request? I got it down to 2, but that's my reasoning as to why I would choose B. I don't know if I'm right. Remember, I'm seeing these for the first time too, so fingers crossed. Let's see. Oh, you said C too? It's just gonna be one of those times where y'all are right and I'm wrong. My pride can handle that, but I don't know. All right, 162. Hey, the answer's B. The answer's B. Hey, the answer B. Okay. And let me read the explanation to you just because, hey, I didn't know. The Homeowners Protection Act requires automatic PMI termination when the loan balance reaches 78% of the original purchase price, not the current value. At 80%, the borrower may request cancellation, but the lender can require a current appraisal. At 78%, cancellation is automatic, regardless of the current value. There you go. So, and it does say C and D overstates the lender's discretion. So it's this idea like there's a hard and fast rule. Look, bank, as soon as this borrower has 78% LTV, or they've got at least 22% equity based on the original value, then you have to go ahead and get rid of PMI. You already made enough money off of us, bank. So if you could get it down between B and C, you're right there with me. I went with B just because I knew that was a true statement. I wasn't sure about C, but it could have gone either way. And now we've learned a little something. All right, let's move on. 163. A property is located in an area where the government exercises its power of eminent domain to build a highway. Okay, what do we know about eminent domain? They have the power, the government has the right to take property if it's for the good of the public, and they have to pay you fair market value. Right. The government offers 280,000, but the owner believes the property is worth 340,000. What is the owner's legal position? Now, in my mind, what I'm thinking the answer here is, I don't care what you want, owner. You're going to have to leave. Now you can have, you don't have to accept the 240, or sorry, the 280. What you can do is say, I don't agree, and you can ask for a court hearing, and the judge will say, okay, let's see what's going on. And just as a side note, I've always been told, if this happens to you, go ahead before it moves too far ahead and get an appraisal. So you can go to a judge and be like, hey, judge, the government offered me 240 or 280, but this appraiser said my house is worth 340 and you have to pay me fair market value. You're still going to have to give up your property. You just might be tied up in court about how much they give you. So let's see if one of those answers matches my answer. A, the owner must accept the government's offer because eminent domain is absolute. That's not true. I know that you can wait for a, court date for the monies. You're still going to have to give up the property. B, the owner can refuse the taking if the property has been in the family for more than 20 years. Yeah, no. And that's one of those things that sounds like it could be real, but it's not. They're trying to make sure you know. I mean, that sounds good, but that's not it. C, the owner must negotiate directly with the highway contractor, not the government. No, the highway contractor is not the one taking. No. Or D, and hopefully this is the right answer, the owner cannot prevent the taking, but has the right to challenge the compensation amount in court to receive just compensation. Boom! I like that one. Our answer is D. Yes. Good job, Miss Crystal. I see you there. Oh, and I see you, Miss Carolyn. Okay. An investor holds a property as a 1031 exchange replacement property. The investor's original relinquished property had an adjusted basis of $250,000, right? So this is what the investor put into the property. That's your adjusted basis, and was sold for 400,000. So that is your take the adjusted basis away from your, oh, what's the word, y'all? Why am I having a brain fart? I can see it. It's what you have in the property. It is your amount realized. So that 400,000 equals the amount realized on that property. So if you sold it for 400, but 250,000 of it was your own money, then your capital gains on that property is the difference. So 400 minus 250, what is that? 150? That's $150,000 in capital gains. The replacement property was purchased for 430. So the new property was purchased at 430. What was the investor's basis in the replacement property? I don't like how these numbers add up. 140. Let's see. Okay, I did ask Claude to make these harder as they went along, but he won't playing with me. Let's see. 280. I mean, I guess if you bought it new for 430, but then you took the 150 from before, I can do the 430,000 minus the 180,000 or the 150. Sorry, that's the 150. And that gives me 280. I mean, that's an answer choice. D, what do y'all think about that one? Carolyn, you said, I'm not sure. Oh, 164. Crystal, you said D. I got to go with D too. That's the only thing. I'm not sure, but because I understand the vocab, I can make a pretty educated guess. So, is it D? I don't know, but let me check. Survey says, hey, we got it right. We got it right. Hey, we got it right. I'm doing a dance. I'm doing a dance. I'm doing a dance. I'm doing a dance. Okay. See, knowing the vocab helps, even if I had no clue what that question was talking about. Well, I did have some clue. I just wasn't 100% sure how to do it. I used my best guess. 165. An agent prepares a CMA for a seller's property. Okay. Three comparable or comparable sales show adjusted values of 278, 285, and 291. The property has been receiving strong buyer interest in a market with 2.1 months of inventory. So that is a seller's market. That is a whole different conversation. If you all are going into residential real estate, you have that idea of a buyer's market or a seller's market. You should be taught what that means, but I will tell you, at 2.1 months inventory, that is definitely a strong seller's market. And what that really means is if no other seller were to put their house on the market from this moment in 2.1 months, there would be nothing else available if we have the same rate of people buying. Which listing price recommendation demonstrates the best market analysis? All right, 265 to generate multiple offers quickly. 310 to leave room for negotiation in the hot market. 285 to 292 positioned at or slightly above the comparable range given the low inventory conditions. Or 278, the lowest comparable to ensure a fast sale. Now, I will be honest, if you were already licensed, I would tell you any of these would work, and it's up to what does the seller want. Y'all, and I'm going to go into training mode for a moment. When you become a listing agent, it's not about what you think is best. It's about you giving your expert advice as to what the seller wants. This answer would be different. If I had a seller that said, I just need to get out of this house now, then go ahead and put it lower so that you know it would sell. If somebody says, I want to get every single penny I can out of this, then I could either price it high or I could price it and start talking about, do we want to try to create a bidding war, right? So there's lots of answers to what's the best decision. But remember, at the end of the day, this decision in real life is up to your seller, not you. Your job is to come in as the professional and say, here are our options. Now, we can see here from our numbers, they range from 278 to 291. So according to it says demonstrates the best market analysis. If it's 2.1%, okay. I wouldn't say it's A because you don't need to try to generate multiple offers quickly because it's this 2.1 months of inventory, right? This B310 seems a bit high because in a market like this, cool. But if you start at 310, people will probably start putting in their offer at that price. And what happens if it doesn't appraise? So I'm going from my gut that it's probably not B. Yeah, you can leave room for negotiation, but that's way higher than what your analysis said it could be worth. 285 to 292 positioned at or slightly higher above the comparable range given low inventory conditions. I like that. It's at the higher end of the range, just a little bit tad higher, not 310,000 higher. And because there's not a lot of inventory, people may just go for it. It's a seller's market. I like C. Or D, 278, the lowest comparable to ensure a fast sale. Well, A and D kind of feel like the same. That could be a good answer if you have a seller who needs to sell quickly, but it says demonstrates the best market analysis. So I got to go with C. I got to go with C on that one. Again, I've never seen these questions before. Let's see. Would I pass? Would your instructor pass this licensing exam with this question? 165. Hey, the answer's C. The answer's C. Hey, the answer's C. Go me. Go me. It was my birthday. It was my birthday. Okay. Oh my gosh, my birthday month is over. That's very sad. Mm. So, also tomorrow my dad has a medical thing, y'all. So if you send a little prayer and good wishes his way, I love that. He's gonna be fine because I've told him he can never be sick and die. But send some love his way anyway in your prayers tonight. All right, 166. An owner of a life estate commits waste by demolishing a structure on the property, and the remainder man objects. Which statement is most accurate regarding the remainder man's rights? Okay, so let's talk about what's going on here. Oh, thanks, Miss Crystal. So, if a life estate, so let's use Crystal. If I had a property and I gave it to Crystal for as a life estate, you know she could stay there as long as she's alive. Sorry, Miss Crystal. And when you die, it's going to go to a new person. Maybe it'll go to Miss Carolyn, and then Carolyn is the remainder man. So when we say that the life estate owner committed waste, that means they're kind of destroying the property. Think of that like, oh, I let you borrow a CD and it or a DVD and it came back with all these scratches or record and it's not playable. Like that's not cool. I let you borrow my car and it comes back demolished. What? No. So eventually that property will become the remainder man's property, but not until the life estate's a life tenant, in this case Crystal, were to die. But she's not dying either. There you go. So A, the remainder man must wait until the life estate ends to file any legal action. B, the life tenant has absolute control over the property during their lifetime. Well, I don't think that's true because I know I'm always saying, as the life tenant, you don't have the right to waste the property. You can't destroy it because long term, it's not going to fall. It's not a fee simple absolute. It's going to go to somebody else. So I know the answer is not B. C, the remainder man has no right until the life estate ends. Or D, the remainder man may seek an injunction to prevent further waste and damages for waste already committed. I'm not an attorney, but hey, Miss Maribel, I'm gonna go with D because the remainder man, you can't waste it. And so I don't think the remainder man has to wait until the life estate ends, the person dies, right? And this is kind of saying the same thing. Isn't A and C basically saying the remainder man can't do anything until the life tenant dies? I mean, those are very similar. So I don't think it's A or C. I do believe our answer has to be D. And I'm going and saying that because of process of elimination. It's not B. And A and C basically say the same thing. So even if I didn't think D was the right answer, I'd have to go with it. Now, let me check to see if we're right. 160 cents. The answer's D. Hey. Yep, your answer's D. Okay, our next one, 167. And just by the way, I know that this is a different time for a class, but on Sundays, do we like this later time on Sunday? Does this work for more people? So it's 7 o'clock Eastern where I am. That means it would be 4 o'clock California time. I mean, just tell me, do we like this later time or does it matter to you? I mean, in theory, I could go even later on Sundays, but who knows? Just give me feedback. We'll find a good time. I think 7 on Wednesdays works well. I was doing 5 p.m. Eastern on Sundays, which would be 2 p.m. Pacific. But you tell me. We'll find a good time for y'all. 167. A developer divides a 40 parcel in a section described as the northwest quarter of the southeast quarter of section 14. If the developer sells the northern half of this parcel, how many acres does this buyer receive? Well, he divides a 40-acre parcel in a section, and if he sells the northern half, then he's got 20 acres. I mean, I don't even know if that was necessarily real estate math. You said 7 or 6 p.m. is good on Sundays. Okay, thanks for that, Miss Crystal. I think it's got to be 20. They tried to confuse us with the northwest quarter of the southeast quarter of section 14, but that's describing the 40 acres. If he sold the northern half of the 40 acres, he sold half. He's got 20. Boom. I don't even have to check the answer on that one. I know that's got to be right. Like, boom. That's how it goes. Don't let these questions get you trying to sound all fancy, but it's not. Mm-mm. It's kind of like saying, people just get fancy with stuff. I don't know. Oh, like saying it's a vase instead of a vase. Dude, it's a vase. A vase, whatever. All right, 168. A buyer signs a contract with a liquidated damages provision. It's important we know what that means, of $10,000. The buyer defaults and the seller sues for $50,000 in actual damages. A court reviewing the liquidated damages clause will most likely consider. So, what are liquidated damages? Liquidated damages are the amount that when you have two people in a contract where you say, hey, if I don't buy this house, assuming it was a real estate contract, then here's the money that you can get. So think of it like your earnest monies basically serve like in liquidated damages. Some states will actually call them liquidated damages. Other states will be like, we won't call it liquidated, but it's basically serving the same function, right? So a court reviewing the liquidated damages okay, but there was $50,000 in actual damages. So that if it's actual damages, those are monies that the seller physically, like in reality, lost. I mean, my guess. Let's see. Reviewing the liquidated damages clause. A court reviewing the liquidated damages clause will most likely consider whether the 50,000 is more than the property is worth. Well, that has nothing to do with it. This is about were you under contract or not. Whether the seller attempted to mitigate damages by relisting. Again, I'm thinking that doesn't matter if you try to relist it because you're getting that $10,000 whether you relisted it or not. That's the whole point of liquidated damages. C, whether the buyer intended to default. Well, no, you signed liquidated damages for liquidated. You agreed to this. Doesn't matter if you intended to or not. I'm really hoping D sounds good. Whether the $10,000 was a reasonable estimate of anticipated damages at the time the contract was formed. That sounds reasonable, right? That actually sounds like a good plan. The court is going to look to see, well, you're asking us for 50 and yes, you're telling us that's actual damages. Was $10,000, reasonable amount? So I'm going to go with D and let's see if I'm right. Boom, shakalaka laka boom. Yes, our answer is D. I like it a lot. Y'all, you're not gonna know every single answer 100%. You see me going through these questions for the first time. It's okay if you're not 100% sure, but let me roll back for a second. I knew A, B, and C didn't sound good, so I could feel really good about choosing D. 169. A licensed real estate professional decides to buy an investment property for themselves. When submitting an offer, the agent is most obligated to A, have another agent submit the offer on their behalf, B, disclose their license status to the seller in writing, C, nothing additional. Agents are entitled to buy property like anybody else, or D, offer above the asking price to avoid the appearance of impropriety. Well, my guess is that our answer is B. In most places, if you are licensed, you're going to have to tell the person on the other side, even if you're going on it, you're doing this on your own for your own personal property. Most states, and if you're a realtor, it's in the code of ethics, you have to share that you are licensed. That hey, you're a professional in this industry. That's like going to the bar, playing a game of pool, and the person not being like, and for money. Oh, by the way, I was in the Olympics for pool. Like, I'm gonna need you to tell me these things. Or you decide to, run a race, and the other person's like, oh, did I tell you that I won the Olympic gold? And things I needed to know before I started. So I'm gonna say, and I know this is gonna be true, our answer is B. You need to disclose, disclose, disclose. I live for the applause, applause, applause. I live for the applause, applause, live for. Okay, focus, Candace. Number 170. An investor owns a rental property and wants to defer capital gains taxes by exchanging it for another investment property. That's a 1031. Oh, look, under the IRS section 1031, the investor must identify a replacement property within how many days of selling the relinquished property. Ooh, this is just a flat memorization. You have to identify a new property in how many days, and then you'd have a total of some more days in order to close, right? This is flat memorization, which is why you all have heard me say, if you are studying and you haven't made a list of all the numbers that we deal with for the test, you need to. So I can 90, 180, 45, 30. I mean, these are all very common numbers, but I know that I know you have 45 days to identify, and then you have half a year or 180 days to close on the property. Those are just numbers I know, and you should know them too. 171. A buyer's loan application shows a gross monthly income of $8,500. The buyer has existing monthly debt payments of $600, a car loan, $250 in student loan. The lender uses a 28 front-end ratio and a 36 back-end ratio. What's the total maximum housing expense, or PITI, sorry, that this lender will allow? Well, we know that this 28 and 36 means something. That means no more than 28% can go towards housing expenses, and no more than 36% of what you make in a month can go towards housing and debt. Right? This is what this means. So what would I do? Anytime I see these kinds of problems, I like to go through and draw a little line, because I'm going to have two math problems, really. I'm going to have the 28 side, and I know that I'm going to have the 36 side. So whatever the monthly gross income is, or the gross monthly income, times 28%, that's going to give me my max housing expense. And if I take my monthly gross income and I multiply it by 36%, then I'm going to then have to take out my expenses, right? And then, because what that's going to give me, well, I should probably do it this way to make sense. When you take your MGI, your monthly gross income, or your gross monthly income, whichever way you want to put it, and you multiply it 4 times 36%, that's going to give you your max housing's expense, your HE, plus debt. So when you look at everything, this is the max amount that you are allowed to take and put towards your housing expenses and your debt. So let's do it. The gross monthly income, or the monthly gross income, is going to be 8,500. I'm going to multiply it by 28%. So according to our front end ratios, this person can borrow 8,500 times 28%. The max they could spend would be $2,000. $28,380 on PITI. On this side, we're going to take the 8,500 and multiply it by 36%, and that's going to give us 3060. But that's your housing expenses and debt. Now I need to subtract out my debt. So my debt is minus the 600 at the very least, right? And then depending on how real you want to be, we're going to go ahead and take out that 250. Just go ahead and on this test, assume you will. So I'm taking that 3060, subtracting 600, because that's a debt. That was a car. And then this was your student loans. So if you had housing and debt and you take out the debts, what should be left is a housing expense. So 3060 minus 600 minus 250, that gives me 2210. So now we got two different, and this would be PITI, or your housing expenses. PITI slash housing expenses, or housing expenses slash PITI. So now we got two answers. We got the 2380 and you got the 2210. Without going into a lot of detail, when you get these questions, for those of y'all going to be tested on your qualification incomes, the easiest way to know which is the right answer is to say, in a question like this, if they ask you for a max amount, go with the lower of the two numbers if they've given you two different percentages. So if they ask you for the max, go with the lower number. If they ask you what the minimum amount of something is, go with the higher number. They asked us what the max is, so let's go with the lower number. And in this case, it's going to be 2210. Now I see on our answer choices, we've got 2380. We got 2210. You got 2380 using the front ratio, but the back end ratio limits PIT to 2210. 22, yeah, to that, right? And then 3060. Well, we know it's not 3060. We got that one down. I think this is the best answer. 2380 would be true if you're only going with the front. 22,210 is great, but C really puts it out there, right? It really puts it out there. If we're looking just at the front end, it'd be the 2380. If you're looking at the back end, it's 2210. And so A can't be more right than B. So we're going to go with C. Hopefully that helps. Right? And with that, boys and girls, you're confused on this one. You know what, Carolyn? Tell me, where did I lose you? And I know it's going to take you a second to type it, but I do first. Are you in what state are you in? Are you in a state where you know you have to know this? And if so, I can break it down and explain it a little bit better. I didn't do a longer explanation. So Carolyn, I will wait a minute because I'm not in a rush. Tell me where I'm lost. Are you lost? Are you lost on what the 2836 means? Are you confused on how I did the math? Let me know. And Miss Crystal, I see you getting the answer right. I see you, and I know you're in North Carolina, and I know you're going to see this on the exam. Nice. You're in Virginia. Okay. Have you seen in your class stuff, have you seen these 2836 questions where you had to do math before? Or is this the first time you're seeing any question like this? Because not every state has you doing this. So if you're in a state, if Virginia doesn't have this, you're confused on the math. Okay. On why I did what I did, or okay, so let's just talk about it. So you're gonna, and I know it takes a second. Does it make sense, this part right here? I'm gonna put a number 1. Does this concept make sense to you? How do you know when to divide instead of multiply? Okay, we'll get there in a second, Miss Maribel. So this is your first time seeing it. Let me do a quick little search on ChatGPT and see if this is math you need to know how to do. I'm going to ask ChatGPT. I don't know if it'll be 100% right, but let me take a look. Let me pull up my ChatGPT and I'm just going to type it in. Does a real estate exam student in Virginia need to know how to calculate 28, 36% qualification ratios? Now, I don't know if it'll be correct. Ratios on their salesperson exam. Because if you're going for broker, I would probably say you need to know. But let's see what ChatGPT says in general. Mhm. All right, so you understand what that means, and that's good. All right, come on. ChatGPT is thinking about it. We'll come back to it. So here's why I did what I did. And Carolyn, let me know, do you know how to use a T-bar? Because I can T-bar this if that makes more sense to you. So if you want me to use a T-bar, put T-bar in the chat. If you want me to do regular math, like algebraic math, tell me just regular math. So do you want me to T-bar explain it, or do you want me to regular math explain it? Either way, doesn't matter to me. Mhm, mhm, mhm. All right. Do. Yeah, you do need to know it. hmm hmm That's what ChatGPT says. You need to probably know it for Virginia. So let's get to it. The T-bar. All right. So here's what I would do. Ooh, let's come up with a clean thing to work with here. Okay, so you understand the whole concept of 28% and the 36%. So usually when I'm going to run out of space. Let's use something different. Boom. Use a different app here. There we go. This one won't run out of space. So if I were teaching this in T-bar method, I would tell you when you do these, you're going to make two T-bars. Draw a line in the middle and make two T-bars. And when I teach a T-bar, I think labeling is everything. So when I label this, because these will be my percentage signs and my dividing signs and my multiplying signs, we know no more than 28. Oh, that doesn't go there now, does it? Of the monthly gross income, no more than 28% of it can go towards PITI, or this could be considered housing expenses. Right? And we know that no more than 36% of your monthly gross income can go towards your housing expenses and debt combined. So hopefully that makes sense. Now that I know that's my outline, what I know from that problem, and I'm going to change colors, is that our monthly gross income was $8,500. So I can put 8,500 here and I can put 8,500 here, because no matter what, if you make $8,500 a month, no more of 28% of that can go towards your PITI, if you had to pay PMI, any of that. Cool. So if I'm going to solve on just the 28 side, if I do 8,500 times the 28%, I cleaned out my calculator. So that was 8,500 times 28%. That gave me an answer of 2380. So off the bat, if all we're doing is looking at how much you could spend a month if you make $8,500 a month, then this would be your answer. You could spend, a bank would say, you know what, you make $8,500 a month. We'll let you put 2380 towards PITI, PMI, HOA, anything having to do with housing expenses. Well, then on the 36 side, you're saying, look, if you make $8,500 a month, you can put 36% of that towards housing expenses and any debt that you have, which was the 30/60. So let's imagine you lost your mind and you're like, I'm going to go out and buy 3 new cars, and each car payment is $700. If you have 3 car payments of $700, that means $2,100 of your monthly income is going towards that this number. It would be going towards this number. So the more debt you have, the less they would loan you. If you had $2,100 in card payments, they would only say, look, we don't care what you spend your money on, but we're not going to let more than $3,060 go towards these housing and debts combined. So if you chose to put $2,100 toward cars, you can have about $900 for a housing payment. Now, that's a made up example, so we just kind of want to give you that idea. But 30/60 is what you could spend it towards housing and debts. But remember, the problem also said we had some recurring debts. We had recurring debts of, what was it? I think it was 200 for the student loans, and I believe it was 650 towards debt, or it was some combination of that. But that means $850 were your debts. So they're saying, look, you can spend 30/60 however you want. Some of it can be PITI or housing expenses, some of it can be debts. And if you put 850 towards debt, the difference is what you can put towards PITI. So I'm going to do the 30/60 minus 850, and 30/60 minus 850, and it was 2210. So as far as the bank is concerned, if this person has $850 in recurring debts, you can't spend all 30/60 towards PITI. You can't. You've already committed $850 towards these recurring payments, so the most they'll let you have is $2,210 to go towards any housing expenses. Does that kind of help, Carolyn, or did I lose you any place there? Let me know. Did this help at all? Do, do, do. Let me know. And I know there's a delay. Boo, boo. Mm-mm-mm-mm. Oh, good. Yes. Yay. I'm glad the T-bar worked. Woot, woot. I love that. I love that the T-bar worked. And again, I like it. I just love a good T-bar. I do have on my page some where not only do we find out, oh, do we want the 2010 or do we want the 2380? Sometimes these problems will say, what's the max loan amount? Like, what is the max loan amount you can have? And that's when you'd have to get into factors. I don't have one of these available right now, but if you want me to do one of those, just let me know next week, or I guess what is today, Sunday? So next Wednesday, let me know and I can bring one of those up. Otherwise, I forgot to get myself some water before I started this thing, so it is time for me to go. But again, please let me know, especially if you're watching on YouTube, do you prefer this later time where it's 7, well, now it's 8:15 p.m. Eastern, which would be 5 something Pacific. Do we prefer this later time? Is it easier for more people? If so, we can officially make it 7 o'clock both nights. It's really up to you all, and I hope this helps. And if you have questions, you know how to reach me. And I guess what I can say now is I will see you next time. Bye, everybody.